Hey, it's time for TV Skywriter. Hey, good afternoon slash evening world. Pat Murray here with TV Skywriter. I'm going to start off the show with something a little different. Chris Keller on the piano. Take it away, Chris. Beautiful. Cinematic ending there. That was nice, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I want to point out to the algorithms of YouTube, yes, that was an original. Okay, I used to get in trouble for playing musicians' music off their CDs.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's too bad.
yeah. Well, I didn't know any better. You're not supposed to play recorded music on Google Plus Hangouts, which this is
Oh,
sort of like a hybrid.
okay.
Be that as it may, tell us about that beautiful song. I love the chords too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I call it Song for Suarez. And I was picturing Mexico, the coastline of Mexico, when I wrote that. Um, and I did spend some time in Mexico. And also, I lived for 6 years in Venezuela.
Wow.
I, I was there as a pioneer for the Baha'i faith and doing Jazz for Peace concerts and things. It was quite an experience, really. That was pre-Chavez. That was before the
Oh yeah,
Chavez.
yeah.
Mhm.
How
So
did you
I'll
how did you even get into jazz? How did you learn how to play it?
Oh,
The
wow.
music.
Well, the house where I grew up had a piano, and my mom was a huge fan of jazz. Huge fan. She was a painter and artist, and a lot of different media and kind of like abstract expressionism. And she loved to listen to jazz records, especially when she was painting. But all the time, I remember, even from the crib, like my lullabies were like Ella Fitzgerald and Duke Ellington and Count Basie and the Monk, and, yeah, Brubeck. So I kind of grew up. It was in the atmosphere that I grew up in.
So was this natural for you to? So when you were a kid, kind of fiddling around with the piano, did you naturally just play jazz chords, or did you have to learn that? And
Actually,
did you study music?
Yeah, I started playing piano like really intensely, like at age 4, right after my father died. And to me, music was a healing. It was like a form of prayer. I didn't know what to call it at that time, but music was a very healing for my soul, soul medicine. And at first, I heard the jazz records, but I didn't like play like that. I didn't like try to. I was tended more towards traditional, like folk music and nursery rhymes and stuff. And then I studied classical from age 5. I grew up studying classical piano, all from first grade all through high school, and then I got my degree in college, Chapel Hill, umpty million years ago in classical piano.
Oh,
and then about
okay.
5.
So that was actually your major, classical piano, performance or theory or what?
Yeah, I have bachelor's in performance from Chapel Hill.
Sweet.
It was I always loved the sounds of jazz, and I gravitated towards the classical piano music of the early 20th century. And then
name some composers so we know what period.
Like Bartok, Stravinsky, Prokofiev,
Ravel, the wild stuff.
Ravel. And so
does that include that tonal? What's that called? The 12 tone and all that. Does that include that?
Well, those guys were contemporaneous, but I never got into that. That never clicked with me somehow. The 12 tone. Right, or the atonality. In fact, one time I remember in a class, a teacher told me, he asked me to improvise something atonal, and I couldn't do it. And he says, "You're going to need shots. You're so bad off."
Oh man!
To me, all music is tonal.
Did you know that when Stravinsky's, I think it was The Rite of Spring, made its debut, that the audience threw a fit?
They did. They rioted.
Yeah.
And one time when Stravinsky was in New York, and Charlie Parker saw it in the audience, Charlie played some stuff from The Rite of Spring, and Stravinsky flipped out.
What? Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Parker was really impressed with that piece, and so he kind of had it in his repertoire, I guess.
Nice. Now, as far as your musical development, so you were studying classical, but as a teenager, did you play around with other kids, have a little band or anything like that?
I started playing, I was about 28 before I started playing jazz, really. About 5 years out of college, I suddenly realized that what I really wanted to play was jazz. It just sort of came like out of the blue. I think after I got out of the academic circle, it sort of occurred to me. And then I met a wonderful, wonderful jazz pianist named Jim Milne, who was an artist in residence at NC State University around 1978. And he invited me to come sit in with the combos and stuff. And he said, you should, take some lessons. And I studied with him about 3 months and just had a wonderful, wonderful experience studying with him. And he was such a wonderful human being. And so he just, spoke directly to the humanity of the students. And
so did you have the nerve to sit in from the beginning and then learn the technical aspects of jazz, or did you study first and then sit in?
Actually, I went to I was attracted to a combo playing I was over at NC State, and I heard them and kind of peeked in the door, and he motioned, come on in. And he asked what I played, and I said piano, and he just sat me down at the piano, and he said, go.
Wow.
But after trying to fit in with this, and basically doing the best I could with classical training. He said, "Well, you have talent. Come and study with me, and can help you with some, the seventh chords and voicings and the rhythms and all the, give you a little more to work with." So, and he was very intelligent in the way he went about it, because he bridged what I knew from the classical theory over into jazz, and he got me the real book, and then that was back in the day when you had to buy the real book from some guy in the alley out of the back of the van,
It was illegal.
Yeah, right. So he showed me how the jazz notation in the real book, and I loved that, because it was like having the framework of the song right there, and so gradually
just so people know what we're talking about, the real book is like a compendium of the most popular jazz tunes, and they have some not so popular ones in there too. But basically, the melody's written out, and then on top of the melody are the names of the chords, and that's it. You're on your own. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And then they list what version of the song that the song is notated from.
Yeah.
It's not always super accurate, and in fact, there is now a legal version out that you can purchase.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I hate to leave people behind if they don't know what we're talking about. So
yeah, music history.
But you had the ear already, because you grew up with jazz, so it's not like you were hearing strange chords. They were already embedded in your mind, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Laying there dormant.
Right. Oh, and I had no idea until I got out of the academic classical thing how deep the influence of that was. Because little tiny kids will absorb anything, any kind of in their environment, and even like before birth. I mean, they've shown like when mothers play music for their when they're pregnant, that the child is born naturally musical.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that even from birth it can have an effect. Anyway, even before I had met Jim, I was going out, and when I went to music stores, I was picking up things like Duke Ellington songbooks and stuff. And I started to read through them, just like I had been trained, classically. And then all of a sudden, the more I played, I said, wait a minute, I've heard this. I know this one. And it was it took me right back to those early days. So it was sort of a bridge that way, too. So Jim was real intelligent in the way he helped me with this, because he didn't just drop me in the deep end of improvisation, like boom, all of a sudden like that. He used what I knew as a bridge to help me understand what makes up the form and the spontaneity, the creativity.
Okay, now playing the melody is one thing, and playing chords is another. But how did you learn improvisation, or is it something that you can actually learn?
Personally, I don't think it's possible to tell any soul how to be creative. It's because it's something within that soul, within each soul. You can learn tools, like you can learn the theory you can learn the chords of the song, you can learn scales that fit with the chords. But as far as what you want to express, every soul has its own story. So, if you're telling your story musically, nobody else can. It's for you to say, for each individual, how to improvise. But I do think that one can study you can know what's in the toolbox. You can know about music theory and sounds and everything that's in the toolbox. And having grown up around,
sorry, go ahead.
Having grown up around a piano, it's like the sound of the piano is just so deeply ingrained in me that it becomes like internalized, like. You can you hear stuff in your head, and I've sometimes dreamt in sound.
Wow.
Then you wake up and you go and play it. So you kind of get like an internal library, an internal auditory library.
Now, I switched from piano to guitar. I also grew up studying classical music. Started out as a little one and went through, I guess, middle of high school. but I switched to guitar and was really unable to make a real transition like you did. I couldn't replicate anything I was doing on the piano on guitar. I had to start from scratch. But
They're
yeah,
different.
well, they're totally different instruments, I guess. But
Yeah, and totally different techniques. Guitar's a lot harder to play things on, I think. Well, I grew up playing piano, so.
yeah. But I only play rhythm guitar. I don't bother with the notes at all. I think chords are, to me, the best things in the world. The best thing to music is I like the chords.
Yeah.
That's just me. That's just me. But
Speaking of guitar.
But when it came to improvisation, though, did you have confidence right away, or were you comfortable improvising in front of other people? I mean, did you start gigging right away?
Well, what I did after Jim gave me this book, he says, just take this book and go learn by doing, learn on the job.
Wow.
And like that was like 1978, and he was saying that at the time, he said you could count like the well-known female jazz players on one hand. There just weren't that many, or they hadn't.
Who else?
McPartland.
Oh yeah, right.
And then
I can name some lady guitar players, but not piano players.
And you know, like Sarah Vaughan was a pianist before. I mean, she was playing before she was singing.
That's what I heard. Yeah, never heard her play piano, but yeah.
Probably having all that knowledge of the keyboard is what it gave her a tremendous advantage vocally, and just gives you a tremendous understanding of harmonies and scope and everything. And I think her voice is just so phenomenal. Like to hear her with a big band, for instance, it's just incredible. I don't know quite how to express this, but she has she hears things harmonically in a big way, big scope.
I agree, because my folks had old jazz records that I would listen to, and I remember playing the ending of "What a Difference a Day Makes" by Sarah Vaughan over and over, because the three notes that she sang at the end were, well, they're actually a chord. When you listen to it, you realize she's just singing a chord, one note at a time. But it's just so beautiful. Nobody else ends "What a Difference a Day Makes" that way. And I would play it over and over and over because it was just so beautiful.
Yeah. I've heard her sing. I think it was live one time with the Doc Severinsen Orchestra on Carson, and there were parts of that arrangement that just like made your hair stand on end, just because they're so beautiful. Just the harmony.
Did you have the intent of being a jazz musician as a profession, or were you? I mean, you studied classical all through college, so what was your initial goal as a young adult?
I remember at age 5 telling my mom, I know I want to be a musician and a composer. That's what I want to do with my life. I was absolutely certain.
You knew it at age 5.
Yeah. And mom said, it's not going to be easy. And I said, I know, but that's the only thing I want to do. I want to be a composer, musician. So,
wow. Did you become known in the neighborhood as a kid composer at all, or did you really start composing as an adult?
I was composing like I was finally writing things down like age 12. I remember the big, the challenge of having to write down on music paper what I was hearing in my head. And it took a mighty effort, but finally getting over that hurdle and understanding and learning by doing it, and then in junior high, age 15, 16, I was writing songs for the school choir. And
you mean 4-part harmony?
6-part harmony. I wrote a thing called Singing the Carolers for our Christmas program, and it won a composition competition for the state that year.
Sweet.
For theater production, for different theater. I was very active in theater and music in high school.
Nice.
And really enjoyed. We had great teachers. We had a wonderful choir director and drama teacher, and they put on several musicals together and all. So it was a really good experience.
That's a really nice way to get exposed to the world of music. That's wonderful that you had that opportunity. Not all
Yeah,
kids get that opportunity.
yeah, no kidding. And I'm very, very grateful for it. My teacher was, she was a member of the Oregon Music Teachers Association, and they had competitions every year. I do remember I went and played with the junior symphony there when I was like 14, a Haydn concerto or something like that.
Nice.
So, and that was like a huge, big step for me because as a pianist, I had been studying alone all the time. And then to have that chance to play with a ton of other musicians all together.
What was that
It's like
like?
a
Hearing
big,
all that music behind you. What was that
it was
like?
great. It was great. It was like so, and um, I had like heard symphonies on record before and just like, reveled in listening to all the sounds and everything. So it was also a little bit distracting because I wanted to like listen and at the same time I had to
Oh,
make
yeah.
sure to play.
You
Yeah.
never
And
got lost, did you?
no, no, but I had to make sure that I sort of kept the eye out, like the peripheral vision for watching the conductor, watching the arms of the conductor. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't get out of sync with anybody.
That's good. The reason I asked that is because I have there was a record that I got in high school where one of the musicians would always get lost when the flute player came in because he was obviously entranced by the flute player. In fact, it was
Oh,
I don't know if you're a big fan of Brazilian music, but Sivuca, who was on guitar, would always mess up when Hermeto came in. Hermeto plays flute. And Hermeto's a
oh,
wild man. He's like this crazy wild man musician. And either
is that
Sivuca was,
Hermeto?
huh?
Is that Hermeto Pascal?
Yeah, that's him. That's him. He's a wild
I'm,
man. And either Sivuca was cracking up or he was distracted. But he would mess up and you could hear him flub and stop and have to wait for the beginning of the song to come back for him to come back in with his guitar. It was hilarious. Once I noticed it, then I had to listen to it over and over because it was so funny. I love to listen for
that's great.
musical mistakes because I think mistakes are as fun as triumphs to me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Uh-huh. And
so
I love I love how with in jazz performance, like in a club or that the audience is much a part of the experience as the band. I mean, the audience is so inside the music that the participation of them, the audience is playing the ears.
mhm.
They're playing their ears. And so that like is such an essential part of jazz and the response with the playing. And it's a different thing. It's a different thing than a concert hall. Like, the spontaneity of the way people respond to jazz solos and,
Yeah,
like,
because they're like, yeah.
yeah, right. And a guy can say, yeah, and one word and you know exactly what he means.
And it's really funny because when you would how can I put this? I always wonder what it would be like for people to have the same kind of reaction in classical music as in jazz. I always wondered that because I used to play air violin to Yasha Heifetz records, and I couldn't imagine people hollering out, "Yeah, go Yasha!" But that would actually be cool because sometimes you wish you could say something when the
Yeah.
orchestra comes in or when somebody's really doing something stupendous like some big Rachmaninoff thing,
Right.
But you have to sit
Uh-huh.
there quietly and hold yourself in and then just,
Yeah.
golf clap at the end.
Well, and it's funny, as when if you're accustomed to performing, for instance, only in a concert setting where the audience is quiet and then you perform afterward they applaud. When you go into a setting where that's not that way, like you play like in a restaurant or a club or something, it at first can be very disorienting. But then after you played in the like the more natural, the louder atmosphere where people are, it's ambient sound along with your performance. Then going back into the concert hall can be very, very daunting.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden, it's quiet.
Are they really listening in restaurants though? Because there used to be a place in Chicago called the London House, and it was known for lots of noise.
Well, it depends, and it varies too. I've run across both instances where people or you can tell they're really not listening, but then there also it can be surprising. There can be somebody in the audience just listening intently, and you never know, they would come up and talk to you afterward. So I just kind of like when I go in and play in restaurants, I just try to. I'm not so loud that people can't hear each other talking, but I play, to be heard as well for the people that are listening to music.
So I'm guessing that your favorite venue is a jazz club, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess. Right.
So where else
I enjoy the concert hall.
Oh, where else have you played? Because you said that you lived in Chicago or played in Chicago?
Yeah, I lived in Chicago for 4 years from 1983 to 1987. Of that city. I loved it. And it was the first time I went there was with a friend up to the Baha'i House of Worship in Evanston, just north of Chicago.
Okay.
And I saw some posters up there for some jam sessions. And I went to one down in Lincoln. Anyway, went to one on North Lincoln, I think it was. And it was like really great, like this big band. They let me sit in, and then the leader of the band, he said, "I want you to come to another session with me." So we took it. I was so impressed with the friendliness of the people, and it was just a great spirit there. It was wonderful. And I was just blown away by the fact that you could go that on a Wednesday night or something, there could be 4 different jam sessions going on.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
And of course, the jam session is that's like school, for jazz players. So, the part of playing. I'm getting these little notations here. I'm going to have to hang on just a minute.
Okay. I know that Von Freeman had a very, very popular jam session.
Oh, I played one time with Von.
I think it was on Wednesdays, wasn't it? At the on 75th Street. I can't remember
in my apartment lounge.
That's it. Oh my God. Yeah.
I did go there one time. I went there one time to the session. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Vonsky, good old Vonsky. Where else did you play in Chicago? Do you happen to remember?
I played at a place called Zinks, and I played at Spiaggia, which is a restaurant on Gold Coast.
Okay.
I played at the Voo. I played at the Green Mill.
Oh yeah, Green Mill with the super long bar.
Right. And then I played at the Heartland Cafe.
Okay, I remember that.
And also the No Exit Cafe. And there was one other cafe, I can't remember the name of it. But I started that first summer in Chicago. I stayed over a while, and I had a little keyboard with me. I started playing in the subways of Chicago. I took this little keyboard and went and played for change in the subways.
That is amazing, because I used to do that too. It's possible that we passed or heard each other. Because I used to play all the time in the subway. I played guitar, and my friend Abraham played flugelhorn. How about that?
Wow.
Around about the same time, yeah.
I bet you I did hear you. I bet you. Wow. It was about between 1983 and 87.
That was so fun. In fact, that all started with the Troubadour program. The mayor had a bunch of different acts audition, and they chose the top 50 acts to be troubadours, and they would place us in specific spots in downtown Chicago, and they paid us $500 to be street musicians. $500 over the summer. to be street musicians, and it was wonderful. And then after that, it became legal to play, in the subways and the streets of Chicago. That was
Oh,
really fun.
wow. Well, then you were a groundbreaker, and I want to thank you for your service with that, because that's probably, yeah, I remember going down to get a license at the city hall. Yeah, I told them I was going to be, and nobody blinked. They said, "Oh yeah, sure, we know about this." So it was already in place there.
Yeah, as long as you had your card, you were okay if the police stopped.
Yeah, that's
As long as
right.
you had that card. So, what other cities have you played and lived in? It just sounds like you've been a musician all your life. Is that? I mean, is that? Did you live out your dream, or are you living out your dream? You've been able to live as a musician all your life.
Yeah, well, all of my life on my own since like age, well, yeah, since graduating college. I was married
Wow.
briefly for 5 years, but been on my own since age 28. So that makes, oh my God, a lot of years. Almost 40 some years. Anyway, I have played in New York. I played at the Waldorf with I was there for an International Baha'i Congress in 1992. And some fellow who was playing with the big band got ill suddenly, so he called me to sub for him. And we backed of Seals and Props. We sang some songs, and then there was some other singers as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played in New York, Chicago, DC. I lived in DC after coming back from Venezuela,
Wow. Okay.
1996, 95 or 6. And then lived in Baltimore from 95 until 2000. So
And that's where you recorded your album, right?
Yes, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what's the name of your album?
The album is called Love is the Answer. And all the standards, there's one original on there. All the standards are kind of chosen around that theme. And it can be heard at reverbnation.com/Chris Keller Aurora Jazz, all one word.
Okay. So be sure to check that out, folks. And that's Reverb Nation. That's a website that houses the music of a lot of great musicians. So you said reverbnation.com/Chris Keller Aurora Jazz. And if they want to purchase the CD, they can go to what? CD Baby, probably?
Yes, CD Baby has it for sale there, both digitally and if you want to buy the actual CD.
Okay, so support your local music or even non-local musicians. Support your favorite musicians. How about that?
Yeah. Good.
Now, I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, you've mentioned Baha'i a few times. I know their main temple is in I think it's in Wilmette, I believe. Winnetka?
It's in Wilmette Harbor, just north of Northwestern University.
Okay, so it's in Illinois. Because I grew up hearing about it. I don't know anything about the Baha'i faith. Do you mind just giving us a few words about what the Baha'i faith is all about?
Sure. Really, a belief in the unity of all peoples and all faiths. That there's one God, one human family, and that all the messengers of God were sent during different times in humanity's development to teach us according to our development at the time. The concept is called progressive revelation. And for instance, if you think of when you're in school, what you learn in first grade is different from what you'll be learning in 11th grade, all interconnected. Yeah. And when you're writing your papers and stuff, turning your back on your first grade teacher, you're actually applying what your first grade teacher taught. So all of the messengers of God, Abraham, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha, Krishna, Christ, Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah, they're all like teachers in the same school. Um, and the central core teaching, of course, is the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them. That's the central core of all faiths. And throughout history, these social laws have changed according to our development. For instance, there was a law in Judaism not to eat pork, because at the time you could die from trichinosis from pork, because they hadn't scientifically discovered about that yet, but that there was a very good reason for that law at that time, to protect people's lives. Mm-hmm. And then, later on, it was discovered that how to deal with that, how to. So that social law was no longer necessarily was no longer a necessity applicable.
Mm-hmm. But it's still upheld.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, anyway, that's just one example of a social law that has changed over time. But that core law of God is love, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love is the core of the universe. It never dies. It's the greatest power in the universe. Yeah. Wow. Some other teachings of Baha'u'llah. The name Baha'u'llah, by the way, means glory of God, translated from the Persian.
Okay.
Some other teachings are the harmony of science and religion, the spiritual equality of men and women, universal education, and also a cooperation, a confederation of world governments. The idea of we are one people in one home. Baha'u'llah said the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens. So really, we all have our.
It sounds kind of modern.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are very surprised to find out that this message was, Baha'u'llah declared this message in 1863 in what was then Persia, but is now Iran.
Okay.
And at that time, that was the part of the globe that was most in need of enlightenment. There was like a lot of very, very backward, like fanaticism at the time. And but the saying, it's done, like the light of that message. A lot of folks are startled to hear, like, equality of men and women and all this. This is coming out of Iran, but yes, it came out of there. And because of his teaching, and one really big teaching is the independent investigation of truth. Baha'u'llah said the faith of each man can be conditioned by no one but himself. So we are to investigate truth independently. And that teaching was seen as a really big threat by the Islamic clergy, by the mullahs, which were intertwined with the government of Iran at the time. And he was, Baha'u'llah was imprisoned and banished, first imprisoned in Tehran, and then banished to Baghdad, imprisoned there, and then banished to Constantinople, imprisoned there, and finally sent to the prison city of Akka in Israel, which was part of the Ottoman Empire at the time. Mm-hmm. But see, each time he was put in prison and he would teach about these wonderful concepts, more and more people would be drawn to him, and so they kept moving him, because he would get more and more adherence to these teachings. Yeah.
So where did he end up?
He ended up in Akka, Israel. At the time that was, and when that's why Israel, actually Haifa, Israel, is the international center for the Baha'i faith now. It's on Mount Carmel, and his remains are buried in Baji. And anyway, it's all near Haifa, and there is on Mount Carmel there is a shrine of the Bab, and there's a lot of pictures and stuff about this at Baha'i.org, BAHAI.org.
Mm-hmm.
You can see some of the shrines in Israel and some of the houses of worship in different continents all around the globe.
Interesting. Are you still, active?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Since 1980. And Jim Milne, the guy that taught me jazz piano, was he had some of the Baha'i writings around his office, and I asked about them and what their source, and then he gave me a little book called The Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah, which is really the core of the teachings of all the messengers boiled down into little short paragraphs. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, The Hidden Words. And there are also some very beautiful prayers in them. The son of Baha'u'llah, his name was Abdul Baha, was appointed as the center of the covenant to keep the unity of the faith together.
Mm-hmm.
And when Baha'u'llah died. And there are several beautiful writings of Abdul Baha. He actually traveled to the United States in 1912 and went to New York and went as far west, I think, as Denver, Francisco. But he was supposed to make it up to Portland, but he wasn't able to do that. But anyway, he did come and visit the Baha'i community here in 1912.
I wonder how big it was back then.
There weren't all that many members, but and again, at that website, Baha'i.org, you can find out more information and videos, some actual videos from 1912 of some of his the earliest videos ever made. Like it's like the old silent movies. They're not talking.
Yeah, but still.
Yeah, but still.
So I know sometimes when you listen to musicians play, particularly piano, because it's so expressive, and you can hear some musicians have like a church background, very churchy, very often you'll hear like somebody like Horace Silver or whatever,
Yeah, Cyrus Chestnut.
Yeah. So do you think you're expressing your faith when you're playing, or is that just something that you do that's off to the side, that's something else, and you're doing your jazz now? Or do you think that you're able to mix the two?
I think faith is just I can't imagine thinking of it as separate from, it's just part of being,
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I love working with musicians that have the influence of gospel, for instance. For several years, thanks to my good friend Rodney Marsh pulling me in to be in the band, I played for a theater in the park over here in Raleigh, and did the original transcription of their Christmas Carol. I was writing down all the music for to put it, in actual notation. And a lot of the singers in that had grown up singing in church choirs, and I loved it's like a vicarious thrill for me to accompany singers that really have the pipes and have that background. Mm-hmm. And also there was another show in 1981 called Harlem Holiday that they did there at Theater in the Park, and that was just a smash. It was music from the African American culture from the time from the earliest years here on up to the present day at the time, which was like we had everything from Go Down Moses to The Wiz, stuff from The Wiz.
Nice.
And we opened on the night that U.B. Blake passed away.
Wow. I just watched a video of him just a couple of days ago. Wow.
Anyway, so I love working with singers and within musicians in general that have that kind of gospel background. Right. And of course that comes across in blues too.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Speaking of blues,
do you teach music as well?
Yeah. I teach here at in Apex at the Locals Guitars, and my fellow teachers. There's a guy here that teaches guitar. My friend Max. I want to go and see if he might be available to just come say hi for a minute, because he's played with some of the great blues players up in Chicago, and he plays with Mel Melton and the Wicked Mojos.
Oh yeah. He seems like
Just run for a minute if he's available. Hang on.
cool. In the meantime, I'll take a sip of water. I hope you're enjoying the interview. I know I am. Let's see if he can join us.
I'm sorry, he's still teaching, so he has a brief. But
that's okay because I mean you can always come back. And
he's a tremendous blues guitarist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I gave him your information how to contact you, so you might be hearing from Max Drake.
Awesome. Yeah. Looking forward to it. So, is there anything else you wanted to let us know before I have you play us out? I didn't warn you. I was going to ask you to play us out, but do you have another original on hand that you could end the show with?
And actually, I wanted to let you all know that I'll be Saturday night, 7 to 10. I'll be at the Washington Duke Inn playing in the Fairview restaurant there.
Nice.
And also next Wednesday, the 9th of August, I'll be at the Empress Room on Glenwood Avenue in Raleigh from 7:30 to 10.
Nice. Okay. Now, usually, do you play solo or with a band?
I've been doing a lot more solo and duo stuff lately. There may be some folks that drop in on Wednesday at the Empress Room.
When you play duo, is that with a bass player or guitar player?
Usually with saxophonists. I've been doing a lot of work with
sax.
With Tim Smith. You know Tim Smith?
I do. He plays a lot of instruments.
He does. He's a one-man band.
So is it difficult when you play? I can imagine if you're playing with a band, you sort of know where to play. You know, you fit in between the bass and the guitar or whatever. But when it's you and a sax player, do you consider yourself the accompanist, or do you mix it up more? Is there more back and forth?
Yeah, well, there has to be a lot of flexibility because if you want to get the sound of a full band, you have to think like you're a bass player. If you're working with a saxophone, you have to think like you're a bass player. Or this is how I approach it. I've got to be the bass player. I've got to be the harmony person, the guitar, whatever. And I have to be another soloist if necessary.
Right.
So you have to think like three people sometimes. Sometimes you're three people. Sometimes you're two people. Anyway, flexibility is really
solo too because you have to give the sax player a break to catch his breath, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. I love working with Tim. I absolutely love it. And we have he played with me a lot when I played for the Unity Church of Raleigh, and now he's playing for Unity of the Triangle, and he's their choir director, and doing a whole lot with them. But our backgrounds are just very, very complementary, and we mesh well together.
Nice.
He's a joy to play with. Yeah.
So do you have? That's right. You told me you don't have a website, but you want probably want me to remind people to check out your music at reverbnation.com/Chris Keller Aurora Jazz. Are you on YouTube at all?
Some of the songs from the album are on YouTube. Yeah, thanks to CD Baby. I'm a technological dinosaur. I'm the first to admit that. I have so much to learn. You can also Google Chris Keller Aurora Jazz, Love is the Answer. And I'm listed at gigmasters.com as well.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed this interview because I can sort of imagine you're doing this on your own. Because back home in Chicago, where cable access TV is very popular, there are jazz musicians who have their own shows. And basically, in a way, you can see that they're trying to get gigs as well. No harm in that. But they're doing their own shows. They're talking, doing a little back and forth, playing some, music and putting on their own like a little cocktail hour type show. I can imagine you're doing this. That is, if you enjoyed this enough.
Oh, I had a tremendous time. And you're mentioning jazz musicians having their show. I remember as a 3-year-old kid seeing and hearing Nat King Cole on the TV with his TV show. That go
Wow.
way back in
Wow.
1955. Yeah. There was some great stuff on there. Dean Martin had a show where he had Duke Ellington and Ella Fitzgerald come on.
Can you
That was
imagine them
way
on
back when
TV nowadays? I can't even imagine.
no,
Because
no.
we grew up watching,
That was
we watched everything with music. You know, Ed Sullivan, like you said, Dean Martin. Um,
uh-huh.
and of course, there are all the summer replacement shows, you know, with Sergio Mendes and the Jackson
Oh,
Five. And
I love Sergio Mendes. Oh.
uh unbelievable. We could go on for days. But why don't you play us
Yeah.
out, Chris? And folks, I hope you really enjoyed this show. It's been a while since I've had a jazz musician on. I think the last jazz musician I interviewed was what was his name? Doc. Darn it, he's a sax player out of D.C. Um, Doc. Darn it. Anyway, I'll put his name in the notes. I know I'll remember after the show's over. But never mind him. Let's pay attention to Chris as she plays us out. And thanks again, Chris, for being on the show.
Thank you, Pat. It's been a joy. Take care. This is a tune called Stuff Like That.
Awesome.